In the quiet, desolate stretches of the countryside, where the road twisted through the gnarled limbs of ancient trees, Jack and Emily found themselves in need of respite. The skies were shrouded in a heavy mist, casting in strange pallor over the landscape. The only sign of civilization was a broken-down motel that stood like a forgotten relic against the backdrop. Their car tires crunched on the gravel as they pulled into the parking lot. The motel, a single-story structure with faded neon signage, seemed to emit an unsettling hum that echoed through the night. Hesitant but weary from hours of driving, Jack and Emily exchanged uncertain glances before deciding to check in. The lobby, barely lit and smelling of old carpet, greeted them with a flickering fluorescent light. The motel manager, a man with tired eyes and a perpetual stoop, emerged from a door behind the counter. His greeting was a low, raspy mumble that sent a cold feeling down Emily's spine. The couple got their key, room number 13, a door at the far end of the desolate hallway. Each step echoed in the empty corridor, the creaking floorboards amplifying the sense of isolation. Jack tried to lighten the mood, joking about the ominous number, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Once inside their room, the air grew colder, and the light from a flickering bedside lamp barely illuminated the worn-out furnishings. Emily pulled back the threadbare curtains, revealing a desolate landscape outside, where shadows seemed to dance among the trees. The wind whispered through the branches like distant whispers, adding to the scary atmosphere. Despite the unsettling ambience, exhaustion prevailed, and Jack and Emily decided to get some rest. The bed was lumpy and the sheets scratchy, but they hoped a good night's sleep would wash away the lingering discomfort. As the night deepened, a heavy silence enveloped the motel. Jack stirred awake, sensing a strange presence in the room. He glanced at the clock. It was 3 a.m. The room felt colder than before, and an inexplicable sense of dread settled over him. Emily, too, was awake, her eyes wide with fear. A distant sound echoed through the walls, a muffled, rhythmic thump. Jack urged her to stay in bed as he cautiously approached the door, his hand trembling as he turned the handle. The hallway was darker now, the flickering overhead light casting long shadows on the faded wallpaper. The thumping sound grew louder, guiding Jack to the room next door, room 14. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a ghastly interior. With each step, the thumping turned into a sickening squelch. Jack pushed the door open and horror seized him. The room was a macabre tableau of gore. Blood stained the walls and the air was thick with the metallic scent of death. In the center of the chaos, a figure hunched over a lifeless body, a gleaming blade in hand. The serial killer, bathed in the glow of a flickering bulb, turned to face Jack. His eyes, devoid of humanity, locked onto Jack's. A cruel smile spread across his face as he took a step forward, the squelching sound accompanying each deliberate move. Jack stumbled backward, his mind racing for an escape. Panic set in as he fumbled for the door, but the killer's cold laughter echoed through the hallway. Emily's terrified scream resonated from their room as she witnessed the horror unfolding. Desperation fueled Jack's adrenaline as he sprinted down the hallway, the killer in relentless pursuit. Room after room passed in a blur, each one a silent witness to the nightmare. As Jack reached the lobby, he spotted the manager, who now seemed more a phantom than a flesh and blood presence. "Help us," Jack gasped, but the manager merely watched, his tired eyes betraying no emotion. The killer's footsteps echoed louder, the rhythm matching the pounding of Jack's racing heart. Frantically, Jack burst through the exit door into the cold night air. The vast darkness of the countryside stretched before him, a labyrinth of shadows. He ran, driven by sheer terror, the echoes of Emily's cries haunting his every step. The killer's laughter reverberated through the night as Jack sprinted into the woods, desperate to escape the clutches of the merciless pursuer. The thumping sound continued, a grotesque symphony of horror, merging with the cries of the wind. In the blackness of the forest, Jack stumbled, his breath ragged, and his body drained of strength. He turned, expecting the killer's sinister presence, but the woods remained eerily still. It was then that the true horror unfolded. The killer was nowhere to be seen. A guttural growl echoed through the trees, and Jack froze. From the shadows emerged a grotesque creature, a nightmarish amalgamation of flesh and bone. Its eyes glowed with an unholy light, and it moved with a sickening, weird grace. The creature lunged at Jack, and the forest echoed with his agonized screams. the air filled with the stench of blood and decay as the once human figure tore into its prey. In the darkness, the nightmare unfolded, and the motel, now a distant memory, whispered its tales of terror to the wind. The night swallowed the screams, leaving only the unsettling silence of the desolate countryside, where the trees stood as silent witnesses to the horrors that unfolded beneath their ancient branches. The motel, a spectral presence against the misty backdrop, held its secrets, its rooms forever tainted by the darkness that lurked within its walls. Story 2. The night was as black as pitch when Jack and Emily pulled into the sleepy town of Ravenswood. The road leading to the motel was winding, shrouded by the thick branches of ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets in the rustle of their leaves. Tired from hours of driving, the couple spotted a flickering neon sign in the distance. Ravenswood Motel, vacancy. The motel itself was a relic from the past, a single-story building with peeling paint and a flickering sign that hummed softly in the still night air. As they parked in the lot, Jack cast an uncertain glance at Emily. The shadows seemed to cling to the edges of the motel. Inside the lobby, the air was thick with the smell of must and stale cigarette smoke. The manager, a wiry man with sunken eyes and a perpetual stoop, greeted them with a half-hearted smile. His name tag read George. "Evening, folks, room for the night?" George's voice was a raspy mumble that seemed to hang in the air. Jack and Emily exchanged glances before nodding. George handed them an old-fashioned key with a plastic tag bearing the number 13. "Lucky number for you," he chuckled, the sound making Emily's blood turn cold. Their room, tucked at the end of a narrow hallway, felt like a time capsule from the 70s. The faded floral wallpaper clashed with the worn-out carpet, and the air conditioner wheezed like an asthmatic ghost. Despite the dark ambience, exhaustion overcame their reservations, and they settled in for the night. As the couple drifted into a fitful sleep, a low, distant hum permeated the motel. Unbeknownst to them, George, the motel manager, stepped into the shadows outside room 13. His face, illuminated by the glow of a cigarette, contorted into a sinister grin. The night was long, and Jack was jolted awake by a strange noise. He nudged Emily, who stirred with a groan. The room was enveloped in a cold half-light from the flickering neon sign outside. Jack's eyes darted to the window where the branches of the ancient trees clawed at the glass like skeletal fingers. A soft, rhythmic tapping echoed in the room, distant but insistent. Jack slid out of bed, careful not to wake Emily. The hallway outside was silent, except for the rhythmic tapping that seemed to lead him down the narrow corridor. As Jack reached the lobby, the tapping grew louder, transforming into a muffled thump. The source was a door at the far end of the hallway, George's office. Jack approached cautiously, his breath catching in his throat. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a room. Jack peered inside, his eyes widening at the sight. George, the stooped manager, stood over a table covered in old photographs and newspaper clippings. His eyes were fixed on a wall adorned with a macabre collage of faces, missing persons, unsolved cases, and a chilling pattern emerging in the red string connecting them. A gasp escaped Jack's lips and George's head snapped around. His eyes, once sunken and tired, now burned with a horrific intensity. The room seemed to pulse with a dark energy as George advanced, a wicked smile playing on his lips. "You weren't supposed to see this, boy," George's voice oozed with menace. "But now that you have, you won't be leaving." Jack stumbled backward, his mind racing. The thump from the table echoed in his ears, the weight of dread settling over him. The pictures on the wall seemed to come to life, and Jack realized with horror that each face represented a victim George had claimed in the darkness of Ravenswood. Desperation fueled Jack's flight as he sprinted down the hallway, George's chilling laughter echoing behind him. The motel seemed to warp around him, the walls closing in with every step. He burst through the exit door, gasping for air as the night embraced him. But Ravenswood had other plans. The motel, a silent accomplice to George's dark secrets, shifted and contorted, its walls pulsating with a dark force. The trees that had whispered secrets now screamed in the wind, their branches reaching for Jack like skeletal hands. The once sleepy town revealed its true nature, a dark entity that thrived on the suffering of those who dared to uncover its secrets. Jack's screams reverberated through the night as the motel consumed him. its dark energy claiming another victim. As dawn broke, the neon sign outside the Ravenswood Motel flickered in the fading darkness. Room 13 stood silent, its door ajar, a chilling reminder of the horror that had unfolded within its walls. George, the manager with the sunken eyes, returned to his office, the thump of the unsolved cases echoing in his mind. Story 3. The night stretched out like a vast expanse of obsidian as Emma's car glided into the parking lot of a desolate motel on the outskirts of town. The sign flickered hesitantly, casting a strange glow on the cracked asphalt. Weary from hours of driving, Emma decided to check in, her footsteps echoing in the quiet stillness of the night. The motel lobby, a rustic chamber adorned with faded wallpaper and an ancient ceiling fan that creaked with each rotation, felt frozen in time. The clerk behind the counter, a middle-aged man with a tired expression, greeted Emma with a monotone voice. "Room 7, miss, enjoy your stay." With the key in hand, Emma made her way down the narrow corridor, the flickering fluorescent lights casting uneven shadows on the threadbare carpet. Room 7 awaited at the far end, and as she entered, the stale air of the motel enveloped her. The walls seemed to absorb the muted sounds of the night, creating an unsettling silence that hung like a heavy curtain. The bed, draped in a faded floral bedspread, creaked under Emma's weight as she settled in. Exhaustion clung to her, and the soft hum of the air conditioner became a lullaby, coaxing her into a restless slumber. The night unfolded in an indistinct haze. A subtle shift in the air woke Emma, her eyes adjusting to the glow that seeped through the gaps in the curtains. A muffled sound, like distant whispers, echoed in the silence. Confused, Emma sat up, straining her ears to decipher the source of the haunting murmur. The whispers seemed to emanate from the room next door, a soft, rhythmic cadence that danced on the edge of comprehension. Emma dismissed it as a trick of the wind or the settling of the old building, but the unease lingered. As the whispers persisted, Emma found herself drawn to the connecting door between the rooms. A soft glow outlined the frame, and a chill crawled up her neck as she pressed her ear against the wood. The voices were no longer whispers. They had morphed into distinct murmurs, an unintelligible symphony that tugged at the edges of her sanity. An odd compulsion seized Emma. She turned the handle slowly, the door creaking open to reveal the room next door. It mirrored hers, the same faded decor, the same worn-out furnishings, but the whispers were louder, more insistent, as if the very walls harbored secrets eager to be heard. In the center of the room, a single flickering candle cast dancing shadows on the walls. The source of the whispers became apparent, a circle of old, weathered dolls arranged on the bed. Their glass eyes seemed to follow Emma, their painted smiles frozen in a sinister expression. As she approached, the whispers intensified, the voices intertwining like serpentine threads. The dolls, each one with a different dress and a hauntingly unique face, became animated in Emma's perception. She recoiled as if the dolls themselves were whispering secrets that transcended the limits of human understanding. "Join us," the whispers beckoned, a chorus of ethereal voices that reverberated through the room. Emma, caught in a trance, hesitated. The dolls seemed to beckon her into their spectral circle, their small hands reaching out in an otherworldly invitation. The air thickened with an unseen force as Emma's consciousness teetered on the precipice of a reality she couldn't comprehend. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The candle extinguished, leaving Emma in a void of blackness. The whispers escalated, now echoing in her mind, weaving through her thoughts like an insidious parasite. Panic set in, and Emma fumbled for the door, desperate to escape the oppressive darkness. The motel corridor greeted her with its flickering lights, but something had changed. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating with an unseen energy. The whispers, now a cacophony of torment, echoed in every corner, chasing Emma as she stumbled down the narrow hallway. As she reached the lobby, the once tired clerk turned to her with hollow eyes. "There is no escape, Emma. You belong to us now." The lobby morphed into a different realm, a nightmarish dreamscape where the air was thick with the echoes of lost souls. Emma's screams merged with the chorus of the damned as the motel devoured her, its walls becoming a prison of eternal torment. Story 4. The rain hammered against the windshield of Adam's car as he pulled into the parking lot of an old roadside motel. The neon sign, flickering in the storm, cast in creepy glow on the cracked asphalt. Exhausted from the long drive and eager to escape the relentless rain, Adam decided to check in. The motel lobby, an old room with peeling wallpaper and a lingering scent of mildew, greeted him as he entered. Behind the reception desk stood a disheveled man with sunken eyes, his gaze void of warmth. "Room 12, the man mumbled, sliding a tarnished key across the counter. Adam nodded his thanks and followed the flickering overhead lights down a narrow corridor. The carpet underfoot seemed to absorb the sound of his footsteps, creating an unsettling silence. Room 12 awaited him at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar as if beckoning him inside. Upon entering, Adam was greeted by a stale odor that clung to the air. The room, barely lit by a single flickering bulb, mirrored the motel's overall dilapidation. The bedspread bore the scars of countless stains, and the curtains hung limp, their fabric yellowed with age. Despite the uninviting ambience, Adam unpacked his bags and settled in. The rhythmic drumming of the rain on the roof provided a soothing backdrop as he drifted into a fitful sleep. Sometime in the middle of the night, Adam awoke to a peculiar sound. It was a soft, rhythmic thumping, as if someone were knocking on the wall. He sat up, listening intently. The noise seemed to be coming from the room next door, room 11. Curiosity overcoming him, Adam approached the connecting door. The thumping persisted, accompanied by a muffled sound that resembled distant cries. He pressed his ear to the door, straining to make out the source of the disturbing commotion. As he listened, the thumping morphed into a sickening squelch, and the cries grew more desperate. Cold sweat formed on Adam's brow as a realization struck him. Something horrifying was happening on the other side of that door. A wave of apprehension washed over him as he hesitated, debating whether to investigate or seek help. The cries became more anguished, and Adam's moral compass compelled him to act. With trembling hands, he turned the handle, the door creaking open to reveal room 11. The sight that greeted him was a tableau of unspeakable horror. The room had a lamps, no light, and in the center a figure hunched over another, their back to the door. The air was thick with the metallic stench of blood, and Adam's breath caught in his throat as he registered the gruesome scene. The figure, clad in tattered clothing, seemed oblivious to Adam's presence. In its hands it clutched a bloodied object, the source of the sickening squelch that echoed through the room. The victim lay sprawled on the bed, their face frozen in an expression of agony, a crimson pool expanding beneath them. A primal fear seized Adam as he stumbled backward, the door swinging shut with a soft click. Panic surged through him and he fumbled for his phone, desperate to call for help. But the realization dawned on him. The signal was lost in the remote location of the motel. He stood in the hallway, caught in a paralyzing indecision. The thumping resumed, now accompanied by a low, guttural growl that freaked Adam out. The dark presence on the other side of the door seemed to sense his presence, and the thumping quickened, merging with the haunting growl. Adam took a step back, his mind racing for an escape. He glanced around, searching for any means to alert someone, to bring an end to the nightmare unfolding in room 11. As he scanned the hallway, his eyes landed on the motel manager, the disheveled man from the lobby standing at the far end. Their eyes locked, and the manager's expression remained stoic, void of any empathy or concern. In that moment, Adam understood. The manager was complicit, if not the orchestrator, of the gruesome scene unfolding in the motel. Without a word, the manager turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. The growls and thumping from room 11 intensified, the scary force within feeding off the fear that permeated the air. Adam, overcome with terror, made a split-second decision. He turned and fled down the corridor, the echoes of the grisly scene haunting him. The motel seemed to conspire against him, the flickering lights and peeling wallpaper closing in like the walls of a sinister labyrinth. The storm outside raged on, its fury drowning out the echoes of the horror within the motel. Adam's desperate footsteps echoed in the night as he sprinted toward the exit, the neon sign flickering in a cruel dance with the storm. As he burst into the rain-soaked night, Adam dared not look back. The motel, now a macabre monument to the unspeakable, stood silent against the tempest. The rain washed away the traces of the gruesome tale, but the horrors of room 11 lingered, an indelible stain on the desolate landscape. The storm swallowed Adam's cries, leaving only the distant howl of the wind. The motel, shrouded in darkness, held its secrets, and the remote stretch of road bore witness to the unspeakable darkness that lurked within its walls. The night, now a canvas painted with terror, awaited the next unsuspecting soul to succumb to the grisly fate that awaited within the confines of Room 11.